I'm zombie but awake. 밤비가 내려와. Can't wait, no time is a game.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Let me have a little sip of my morning coffee. It's good stuff, man. Listen, there's a couple of things I want to talk about today. One of those being the upcoming, possibly the biggest non-title pay-per-view event ever in UFC history between Jorge Gamebred Masvidal and Colby Chaos Covington. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, just a little bit about that supposed beef between those guys, and then I'm going to move on to talk about the fight itself, the breakdown of the fight, and then a prediction who I think was going to win that fight. First off, I want to get at least one little house cleaning thing out of the way. So I just want to tell you guys a little bit about me. All I am is just a big-time MMA/UFC fan who has been watching MMA since 1993, and I love talking about the sport of MMA, and I love giving my opinions about the sport of MMA. With that said, I am not claiming to be some sort of major authority on the UFC or MMA. I am not an authority on sports psychology. You know, when I talk about what these fighters might be going through outside of the fighting realm and their personal lives, I am not a professional counselor. I am none of these things, guys. Now, I do have some knowledge. I have a college degree in human development, which has given me some knowledge. I have trained in a little bit of MMA over the years in my own personal life, so that gives me some knowledge. But more than anything, what gives me knowledge is I've been watching MMA religiously for almost 30 years. You know, I don't want anyone to jump in the comments, so what do you know? You're blah, 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 you're this or you're that. Hey, it's just my opinion, man. I'm not claiming to be anything other than just a very, very avid fan of MMA who loves discussing it. The reason I'm bringing this up is because I did a video last week on Johnny Walker, and he was receiving hate messages after his loss to Jamal Hill from MMA fans. And I did a video on it, just giving my opinion, saying, hey, man, you know, I think that's kind of messed up. You know, obviously he didn't get knocked out on purpose. The guy did the best he could in there. You know, I don't think it's fair for the MMA community, us, people who aren't even professional fighters, jumping on and, you know, giving the guy a hard time and sending him hate messages and hate mail for having lost the fight when he obviously didn't lose the fight on purpose. You know, my parents taught me to respect folks and to not kick a man while he's down. On the contrary, to encourage people when they're down. And I just did a quick video on that. You know how I thought that wasn't fair for people to do that type of thing to Johnny. And I had a guy to jump in my comments and give me straight hell. Where did I live? In a communist country? This is America. What about freedom of speech? You know, and then telling other people, don't subscribe to this guy. He thinks he's better than you. You know, Johnny Walker, so what if he's a fighter? Has he ever done 7 years in prison with murderers and this and that? And yeah, I was like, whoa, whoa, and whoa, buddy. And I found it to be somewhat ironic because this guy was straight mauling me for giving my opinion about the fact that people were sending hate messages to Johnny Walker. And I just found it ironic that he was talking about this is freedom of speech. You know, people could say whatever they want to say. And I was sitting there thinking, yeah, exactly. And I am one of those people born in, been raised in, and currently live in the United States. And I, too, share that same freedom of speech that you are talking about. Now, I'm not telling people they can't have an opinion. You know, the people who are leaving Johnny Walker hate messages, they are well within their rights as an American citizen to do just that. They can say whatever they want online to Johnny Walker as long as they are not threatening him in a way that causes, you know, possible potential physical harm to himself or his family, and then the law somehow gets involved in that. As long as they're not doing that, they are within their rights to say whatever they want to say, and they do have freedom of speech. I agree with that. But I just found it ironic how this guy was, you know, mowing me down for the fact that I was giving my opinion on this and just saying, that's kind of messed up. The guy's already depressed because he lost the fight, and then on top of it, he's got a lot of people in the MMA community reaching out to him and sending him hate messages and stuff like that for losing the fight. That's all I was saying. He was yelling at me for telling other people that they didn't have freedom of speech when that's actually what he was doing to me. So anyway, funny story. That's why I just had to give that disclaimer right then to let you guys know I'm not claiming to be any professional on anything. I'm just coming to you as a longtime avid fan of MMA who loves discussing it. And that's what I'm coming from. So with that said, the Colby Covington and Masvidal fight. So I did a video on this last week about whether I thought that beef was even real. All right. And I basically said that none of us will really ever know for sure, except for Colby and Masvidal, whether this beef is real. But what I did say was, it doesn't really matter. To me, it doesn't really matter, because even if the beef is not real, and even if these guys are actually still friends and boys in real life, in a lot of ways, that increases the intrigue of the fight, because they're good friends, but yet they're still going to go in there this coming up weekend and beat the tar out of one another in front of 15,000 live and millions worldwide. I think that's gangster, man. And basically, I summed that up by saying I really didn't think that the beef was real between those guys. Colby talks junk about everyone was basically my point. So my thought process is that they are just selling this fight. Well, I don't want to retract that statement, but I do want to say that I think I was half right, because I read an article earlier today with Jorge Masvidal, and he was talking about, back in 2017 at ATT, how Colby began talking junk about everyone there at the ATT gym, in spite of the fact that Dan Lambert, the coach over at ATT, had expressed, hey, you can talk junk to anyone else in the UFC, that's fine, but, as far as what you say in the public realm, leave your teammates and all the ATT fighters out of it. In other words, don't let me catch you talking junk about other ATT fighters. Well, Colby Covington obviously broke this cardinal rule and began to talk about not only Jorge, but other fighters within the gym. And according to Masvidal, that's where his problem with Colby came from. So if I'm looking at this, I say, really the only thing that Masvidal has ever said in terms of his beef with Colby is that he's upset because Colby began to talk junk about him and began to disrespect him, and he felt like that was some sort of betrayal to their friendship and as former roommates and training partners. And that's really the only reason that Masvidal has ever cited caused him to have a problem with Colby. Colby, on the other hand, he really doesn't have a reason. Let's be honest. He really doesn't have a reason. He talks bad about Jorge just like he talks bad about everyone else. He's never really given a specific reason as to why he has an issue with Jorge. And so here's what I think at this point. I think that the beef is half real. I think that Colby doesn't really necessarily have a problem with Masvidal. I think that he's just being Colby. And everybody knows, since he has decided to become this heel in the UFC, his career has literally gone through the roof. So obviously he's doing something right, and obviously the heel persona is working for Colby. So I think Colby is just being Colby. That's what he's doing. I don't think he has a personal problem with Masvidal. At this point, I think Masvidal felt like Colby hit way below the belt when he began to say the things that he was saying about Masvidal and also all the other ATT fighters. And I think Masvidal began to take it personally. So I think what we see here is the beef is half real. I think it's real on the part of Masvidal. Colby, I don't think there's really a beef there. Now, let's talk about whether this beef helps one of these guys as it relates to this upcoming fight. Well, back in the day, traditionally, before professional MMA fighting was a thing, we all had this mentality of, oh, that guy's pissed, he's angry, he's gonna come in there and just murder that other guy and rip his head off. Being angry with someone was almost seen as a good thing and giving you an advantage in a physical altercation or a fight. Well, after 30 years of watching MMA matches and watching people get into people's heads, make them angry, and then they get into the cage and the person who is angry gets mauled. Now we know better. Now we know that anger does not necessarily serve you well when you get into a professional MMA match with another tactician. There's several reasons for that. You're fighting angry, you're fighting emotional, which clouds your thinking. It causes you to not be as technical, and it also can just cause an adrenaline dump. You just want to kill them so bad, and then the next thing you know, you're tired because you put everything, that anger caused you to put everything into those moments trying to finish this fight, and then they basically just fall flat on their face after that with an adrenaline dump. So I think we know now that anger does not serve anyone in a good way when they get into the octagon. So as far as the beef, I think the beef is real for Masvidal, that it's not real for Colby. Now, is it going to affect them in this fight? I don't think so. Masvidal is a very, very experienced MMA fighter. He's been doing this a long, long time. I do think that he is genuinely upset with Colby, but I don't think that it's going to be one of those things where he's going to allow that to affect his performance when it comes to him being in that octagon on Saturday night. Now, is it going to affect Colby? Well, I just said I don't think Colby's really even angry. I think Colby is just being Colby. Colby is playing that heel. So I think the playing field is pretty much leveled in terms of whether this so-called beef that they have is going to affect anyone's performance on Saturday. With that said, let me move on to who I think is going to win the fight. I'm not going to leave you guys hanging. I'm just going to say right out of the gate, I think it's going to be Colby. I just think that Colby is going to be keeping that grappling and that clinch game in his back pocket, and I think that's going to kind of keep Masvidal on edge a little bit. It's going to cause him to hold back just enough on his kicks, his punches, his combinations, and just his attack in general. I think it's going to cause him to hold back just enough to where Colby's going to be able to get this done. Now, I don't think Colby's going to grapple Masvidal the whole time. And a lot of people, don't give Colby credit for his ability to be able to strike in his boxing and things like that. Colby's really come a long way in his stand-up boxing game here in the last few years. I think one of the reasons he's become so good at that is because when he was training to go up against Kamaru, I don't think Colby wanted to take that to the ground because he's aware of what kind of threat Kamaru possessed on the ground and in the grappling realm. So I think he really tightened up his stand-up game through those periods of time where he was challenging Kamaru for that belt. I would definitely give Masvidal a slight edge in the stand-up striking, but I like I said before, I think there's enough in the game of Colby, not only with his stand-up, but also having that ability to grapple and clinch and to be able to win that battle. I think that Jorge is going to hold back just enough to where the striking is going to be relatively even. Masvidal has better kicks probably, although Colby does have a nice body kick that he's been known to land. I think Colby is going to stand with Masvidal long enough to determine whether he's going to be able to win the stand-up battle. I feel like Colby feels like he's good enough to be able to stand with Masvidal and not get finished. So I think he's going to try to do that. But if you get into, the second round on at the beginning of the third round, and he's starting to lose those exchanges in the stand-up war. I see Colby probably going in and clinching, maybe pushing Masvidal up against the fence and wearing him out that way, so that Masvidal gets a little bit more tired there towards the end, lets his muscles fill up with blood, and then in the fourth and fifth round, Colby has great cardio. Great cardio, and in a lot of ways, he's one of those guys that the fourth and fifth round comes when most people are starting to get tired. Colby has been known to even start to pick it up a little bit, or at least not slow down. I think that's kind of what we're going to be looking at. I think Colby's going to win a unanimous decision. Now, with that said, Colby, when he's standing up with Masvidal, he's going to be playing with fire, especially the first round or two. Masvidal is a very, very explosive striker, and especially his kicks. So I think Colby's going to have to be very careful, make sure that he stays on the outside of the range, kind of the outside of the pocket, so that he doesn't get caught clean with anything, because Masvidal, he can knock a guy out. I mean, he showed that with, Darren Till. If he catches you with something clean, it could be lights out for Colby. And Colby, has been known to get caught. He got dropped twice in the fight with Kamaru, and of course dropped in the first fight with Kamaru as well, and finished in that fight. So he needs to be careful the first round or two. But I think if he can survive that first couple of rounds with Masvidal, I think it's easily going to be Colby's fight, and I don't think it's going to be a finish. I think it is going to go to a decision. But that's what I think. I hope you guys watch it as well. I appreciate you tuning back into the channel. I'll see you next time, guys. 누구에게 약이 되고 누구에겐 독 이런 얘기들은 뱀이 들어버렸네. 밤에 들이부어 절간이 부어버려 툭 튀어나와버렸네. 배가 부르지 않게